Hi everyone, my name is Hugh Little. I'm the CEO of Red Cap Sales Coaching, and I also am the co-owner of Professional Business Networks. What I'd like to share with you today is what my partner Ken Ryan likes to call Hugh's house analogy. I think a better title for it really would be a system for starting conversations and keeping them going. Have you ever been at a networking event or a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a wedding or somebody else's class reunion or somebody else's family reunion, and have any of you ever felt as though you just didn't know what to say, and so you kind of stood in a corner by yourself and really didn't talk to anybody? Well, you'll never have to do that again after you see this example. I wish I could take credit for the content of this video, but I was actually taught this system by a very wonderful trainer at Dale Carnegie in Denver. What I'd like for you to do is imagine in your mind a big two-story house. Now, as you can see, my two-story house is very bland and nondescript. But decide what color you'd like your house to be and what color you'd like the shutters to be, and then get that image of that house firmly ensconced in your mind. Secondly, notice that in the second story window of the house, there's a little child that's waving at you out the window. Decide whether you want that child to be a boy or a girl, and what age you want the child to be, and get that image fixed in your mind as well. As the little child waves to you out the window, you notice that he or she is wearing a work glove. What color is the work glove on your little child? As you continue to watch the child waving at you out the window, you notice that there is an airplane approaching. That airplane is coming from off in the distance. It's not a jet, it's a prop job, and it's flying very, very low. It flies right by the house, and as the little child continues to wave out the window, the glove gets caught in the landing gear, and the little child gets whisked right out the window and off into the distance. The propellers on the airplane are not regular propellers. They're tennis rackets instead. For sake of this example, I'm going to just say that they're Wilson tennis rackets, but your tennis rackets can be any brand you'd like. And woven into the webbing of the tennis rackets are strings of colored lights. Mine are multicolored, but yours can be one color, any color that you choose. Now, I told you all of that to tell you this. Each one of the elements in that story represents a question or questions that you can ask people in order to find out about them and to find common ground with them. And so the house, very obviously, is where we live, and that is a great question to ask, particularly if you know that the people at a gathering are from all over Colorado. Where do you live? Are you from here in Fort Collins, or do you live someplace else? Another great way to ask that question is, are you a native Coloradan, or are you from someplace else? And if they tell you that they're from Colorado Springs and that they grew up in Colorado Springs, if you know anything about Colorado Springs, if you've ever been to Colorado Springs, if you know someone who lives in Colorado Springs, and especially if you've ever lived in Colorado Springs or done something there, you now have some common ground. There's a discussion that you can have with that person about Colorado Springs, or wherever they happen to be from, if you know anything about that or if you've ever been there. The second element in the story is the little child waving out the window, and quite obviously that stands for family. You can ask questions like, are you a married man or are you a married lady? Do you have children? If people are my age, you can even ask them, do you have grandchildren? And if somebody tells me that they have children or grandchildren, I have loads and loads of common ground, because I have 6 children and 12 grandchildren. So it's very, very easy for me to talk about kids. The next element in the story is the work glove, and obviously that stands for work. You can ask, what do you do for a living? You can ask, how do you like your job? How long have you been doing it? Are you planning to do that for the rest of your life, or are you going to move on to something else, do you think? If somebody says, well, I don't work, I'm retired, you can simply ask, well, what did you do before you were retired? And there's all kinds of common ground and all kinds of questions that you can ask about the type of work that that person does. And you can find common ground very generally with those folks. The next element in the story is the airplane that comes along and whisks the little boy off into the distance, and that stands for travel. The question that I like to ask in this category is, what's the favorite vacation that you've ever been on? Or how long ago did you take your last vacation? You can get all kinds of great information about places to go and things to do simply by asking that question, and often you can find common ground because you will have traveled to the same places that they did. The tennis rackets on the airplane stand for sports, leisure, recreation, and the question that I like to ask in that category is, when you're not working, what do you do for fun? If somebody likes music or plays music, if they like to read, or if they write, I have loads and loads of common ground. If they are outdoors people, like many Coloradans are, and they like to climb mountains, or they like to bungee jump, or they like to ski, my response generally is, well, my idea of roughing it is having to stay in a Holiday Inn instead of a Hyatt. But that makes laughter, even if there's not common ground. The final element in the story is probably the most esoteric of all, and that is the colored lights that are woven into the strings of the tennis racket. If you're as old as I am, you probably remember a Ford commercial, and in that Ford commercial there was a man with a little light bulb up over his head, and the voiceover said, "Ford has a better idea." And this stands for ideas, for thoughts, for strategies, and you can ask questions. Say you're talking to a person who's in financial services. What's the most important piece of financial advice that you give to people? Or what's the most important piece of financial advice that you ever received? If you're talking to somebody who's a chiropractor, you can ask, what's the most important health advice that you give to people? Or what's the most important health advice that you've ever received? And listen and learn. We can learn something from every person that we carry on a conversation with. If you'll use this system, you'll find that you will find common ground with almost everybody that you talk to, that you won't have any anxiety about starting a conversation because you know what questions to ask. And you'll find that building rapport with people and building relationships is really fun and it's really profitable. Thanks so much for your time.